So stoked. That was awesome. That's amazing.
Yes!
Oh my God, so much relief.
Hello everybody, hope you're okay. Welcome to my back room with a posh wallpaper behind, as chosen by Sue, of course, not me. Now, I was thinking the other day, I watch an awful lot of YouTube, like mainly running videos, some about trains, some about golf, some about whatever. So I thought it might be interesting to start off a new series of running YouTuber news. Let's just see how it goes. Anyway, the first thing obviously to talk about is the Chicago Marathon at the weekend, and let's see how my predictions did this time and just basically see how the runners got on. I think very well in the main. So great to see that Matt has finally broken 220 with a 2:19:31. Let's have a look at his splits here. I think he started off a bit conservatively. The first 5k there, just slightly slower than the 5:20 pace needed for a 2:20. I think that you said in the video that he was in a group with the leading women and they seemed to go off slightly slower than he thought. Obviously not Ruth Chepngetich, that will come to her later. But yeah, I think it was like the leading Americans. But then I think he thought that they were going a bit too slow. Then he took off. And I see there by the 10k split, he was well under the 5:20 pace that he wanted. And at halfway, 1:09:39. And I was messaging Andy Rayner, the FOD runner. And then he suddenly said, oh, he's really slowed up in the 30 to 35k split. And I think that's when he started to get the worst cramps. And you can see there, he did a 5:25 split, which is a bit slower than 2:20. And I think his estimate had gone out then to 2:19:45. He said he managed to overcome the cramps and push on through. So yeah, I think he said he's now going to do the Indianapolis Marathon. I think the Houston one is coming up as well. So it'd be interesting to see whether he goes for a fast time there. I do find it quite remarkable that athletes can literally have a couple of weeks rest and then go off again hoping to do a PB, but perhaps better athletes than I was. So if we come on now to Yowana, who did an amazing 2:39:00. So it's a massive PB for a best part of 10 minutes by him. And I did say that he was capable of a sub 2:40, but it's one thing sort of thinking that it might be possible and actually doing it. So it was very gracious of him also to come onto my video and make a little comment, and I replied in that sort of ilk, you know, just the fact that actually to execute it was great. So looking at his splits here, I think also a bit like Matt, he started off a bit slowly. I think that was partly though more in his sort of area of the field that it was just a bit crowded. So the first split there in at 6:19 pace, although still pretty quick, still sub 20. Then he sort of like cracked on, and then he was sort of coming down to sort of like 6-minute mile pace. And I thought he was going to really sort of burn up the second half. So literally there, 1 second under 1:20 at halfway. And he kept up that pace reasonably well, didn't he, there? Just 25 to 30k, just perhaps a bit of a slowing. But yeah, at all the end of the day, a very, very fine result and testament to what you can do with 100 miles a week running. So I'm interested to see what he does next, whether he pushes on for greater glory in the marathon or he just sort of sticks to just running for fun, as it were. Because I think, you know, a lot of that training that he does, I think he just enjoys running full stop. So whether he'll get the competitive edge remains to be seen, but best of luck to him. Now, I haven't yet seen a video from Eric Floberg, but he did very well as well. I think he was hoping for about a 2:32 and he ended up with a 2:33:59. But I did think that with his half marathon PB so close to mine, that anything around what I did would be a good return. And I think he perhaps was hoping to run a bit closer to 2:30, 2:32. But I think, you know, coming away with a 4-minute PB, well, I think it was actually nearer 5 actually at 2:33:59 is a very good return. And it's a bit like some of the pole vaulters. You perhaps don't want to take all your chunk off your PB in one go because you might never ever do one again. So I think in that sense, a very good run. And look at the splits here. He started off bang on pace at 5:49 with an 18:02, went through halfway in 1:16:26. So by then, yeah, I think he was sort of hoping to push on for a negative split. And he said, I think in his sort of Instagram commentary, that he got a bit of cramps late on and really had to sort of ride through it and almost like rocking back on his heels. And notice there he's got the Alpha Fly 3s on, a shoe that I didn't really sort of care for myself, but we've now seen 2 world records in them in the marathon, and the current ones as well. So yeah, I think that must be a good shoe for people other than me. But yeah, if you just look at the splits here, it was just sort of right at the edge, just wobbled up to a 6:03, but I think he did very well to hold it together. So great running indeed. Now, there's a few other YouTubers in Chicago that I kind of forgot about with running. And then this Messy Happy duo, Mary here running, she did an amazing time, a 3:13:45, a massive PB for her by about 10 minutes, I think. So here's some footage of her running along. looking very excited, I must say. I suppose you would be if you do a 10-minute PB. I don't think I'll ever get that figured again, but it's great to see other people doing it. Looking at splits here, another one who managed to actually pull off a negative split here, went through the halfway in 1:37.21 and finished up with 3:13.45. So just about, what's that, about a minute or so negative split. So that was very impressive. So yeah, just goes to show that if you plug away at the marathons, you're going to come good. If we then move on to the husband, Ben, who also remarkably did a massive PB as well, 2:44.39 he did. So under that magic 2:45 barrier, which I think is also sort of the benchmark of being a pretty decent club runner, I think. And it used to be the benchmark for the championship start on London Marathon, but I think they've raised it a bit now with all the amazing running that people are doing these days. But yeah, I couldn't take it away. That's a really impressive run. Went through halfway in 1:23.29. So yeah, like Mary, did a sort of fairly significant negative split in the end. And I think actually, I thought his target was around about 2:48. So maybe he just sort of felt really good in the second half and pushed on, because look at these splits here. They do seem to get ever quicker towards the end. So if you can finish that strongly, it suggests there's more to come yet. Now, I think it's interesting with Ben because he used to be an Ironman triathlete, and I think since he's moved to Thailand, as far as I could see, he sort of gave up the cycling. But I noticed recently he's started doing a bit of cycling again. So I know they're doing a video soon where they're going to be talking about how they actually achieved their massive breakthrough. It all struck me with Ben, he didn't do a huge amount of mileage. So you think, well, somebody running, sometimes I looked at it, it was no more than about 40 miles a week. So it'd be interesting to see how he's been topping that up and whether it is the cycling or whether there's something else in there that I'm missing. Anyway, massive well done to Ben. Now, if you notice, I've featured 5 YouTubers there who did 5 massive PBs, and here's admittedly not a YouTuber, who did an ultimate PB of a new world record. And there's very interesting footage here on the Balance Runner channel, where the lady here analyses the form of Ruth Chepngetich. And I think it was quite refreshing in a way to see a video about it without complete talk about drugs all the time. I do feel like I've been scanning through the forums and Athletics Weekly articles on it, and for every sort of comment about how amazing the run was, there's sort of more comments about, oh, it must have been false drugs, so many people have been banned in Kenya and all this sort of stuff. And I think, in a way, I find that a bit depressing because, yes, I mean, for sure, there's been a lot of athletes that have been banned, but also thinking, well, they have been banned and they've been caught, and what are these magic potions that are supposedly undetectable that these athletes are supposedly taken? So, yeah, I mean, for sure, there's a bit of a doubt about it, but I think in that sense, I think perhaps to give a bit of credit for most amazing performance. And I think it was an interesting stat I saw on Athletics Weekly where they said at the time when Paula Radcliffe broke the world record with a 2:15, which at the time I think perhaps still does cause a lot of question marks about whether Paula was on something. And you think, well, there's sort of a feeling now that whenever someone does a good time, then they must be on something. And you think, well, where's the point at which you think something's acceptable? I mean, someone like Philly Bowden did an amazing time when she also did a sort of equivalent of a half marathon PB on the way. And there's absolutely no question in my mind or anyone's mind that she did that anything by hard work. And yet athletes like this, you kind of point at the finger. Okay, these are doing times which would be very respectable for elite men, let alone women. But yeah, it just goes to show. And I think, as I say, at the time of that Paula Radcliffe 2:15 back in 2003, the men's world record by Cloudboom was only about a 2:5. And now, of course, it's a 2 dead for Kelvin Kipton, so rest in peace. And obviously now we've got a 2:09. So the gap now between the men's and women's world records is exactly the same as it was back in 2003. Just that everything's just moved on so much. So it's interesting that Athletics Kenya's picked up on this and basically saying, well, give the lady the benefit of the doubt. And, she's been drug tested and all that. And seems to be a bit of a witch hunt going on here. So I do have sympathy with this position, to be honest. But of course, all people are going to question this, and rightly so. And I'm not quite sure what the answer is, really, because, I mean, some people are saying, oh, if you'd have run like 1 second under the world record, no one would have noticed. Well, I'm sure they would have done. So, yeah. Anyway, so what do you think about that? Interesting talking point for sure. So in other news, we had the Oxford Half Marathon, and good to see Aubrey here did another PB, 1:53 something. Yeah, so I think I better stop making predictions about Aubrey's performances. He's clearly on a roll, and yeah, great running for sure. This time I think he was with Pro Direct and Hoka, so I think Rocket X2 is one of his favourite racing shoes, so clearly working for him well there. I think he's next off to Amsterdam, and what do you think? Well, he may be doing another PB, because that's a very flat course, isn't it? But then he's got the big one in New York. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes. Amsterdam is with Mizuno, and yeah, I think it's sort of an unreleased shoe he's using there. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Mizuno is a shoe brand that I don't think does my size in their racing shoes. At least I haven't seen any. So it'll be interesting to see how that is, and maybe they do my size and look out for it. But I think he's there then with New Balance in New York. So certainly testing out all the shoes for sure. Anyway, so great to see him doing a PB. And we also had Flora Beverly, I think, in this one. I think she did a 1:45. No, she'd had glandular fever, I think, for a couple of years. So great to see her back over that. And that's a very impressive time. And another one that we saw here, the Mom, middle-aged running man. And this is perhaps a YouTube channel that is perhaps not quite as well known, but he's quite an amusing chap, actually, sort of a brummy guy. And he said he's booked into this hotel and it was basically a load of rubbish. And but he's booked in for it again next year. I think it's actually at least near the course. So definitely worth checking out there. And he's up to 3.72 subscribers. He'll soon be past me, I reckon. Everyone seems to go past me very quickly. Maybe I think it would probably pass me in a race as well, actually. He did a 1:23. So, yeah, impressive running for sure. We had Chloe Hamard here from, well, so she's now, I think, moved to Shrewsbury. I think she's French national, but she went out with partner Ben to do the Malaga 10K. And there's Ben, I think. I think they both came fourth in their respective categories, in male and female, obviously. I think Chloe did just under 39 minutes. So impressive running. I think she's tuning up for the Valencia half marathon. So you also associate Malaga with sunshine and beaches, don't you? So to see it actually raining in a race is somewhat unusual. But I suppose in terms of a race, that's probably good conditions. So yeah, definitely worth checking out Chloe's channel for sure. In terms of shoe videos, what caught my eye here, Robin Marbert is a guy that I've got to know fairly well through doing YouTube. He's just started his channel here, Road to Trail. He's just hit 200 subscribers, so give him some love. He's testing out some on shoe here. They are Cloudboom Strike, and he basically thinks it's a lot of rubbish. It cut up his Achilles and gave him all sorts of issues. So yeah, perhaps one that I'll be avoiding, but good to see that he's testing out these shoes and telling us that to be cautious. Although it's interesting, in some of the comments, you got some people that seem to enjoy the shoe, but he didn't seem to. Anyway, definitely one worth checking out. Now, Sagasu Running looked at the Nike Rival Fly 4. I think he's using it as a bit of a track session day shoe. Not really a shoe that sort of was really on my radar, and perhaps not really a shoe that is the most obvious sort of one that in the YouTuber land, but good to see that he's testing out these ones in his usual thorough way. And we've got a lot of exchanges with Chris, who is his real name, and yeah, sort of treating him as a friend. It's funny how these sort of you treat some of these people as your friends just by sort of having conversations over Instagram or Messenger or whatever you use. And a few of the people I've met, like Andy FOD Runner. Speaking of which, here's Andy with these Adios Pro 3s all cut up. Now, this wasn't some YouTube stunt. He's actually done 500 miles in them, and I think decided that enough was enough. And he wanted to see how many rods he'd managed to snap. Interestingly, he found it really difficult to actually get the shoe apart. I think it took him best part of an hour and probably more effort than some of the runs he was doing in them. But I think he was very impressed by the shoe and said that if he sees one going cheap in the sales with the Pro 4 imminent, he would definitely try and pick up another one. I've got this exact same shoe, well, obviously not that one, cut up, the exact same colourway and the exact same size. And I've been doing it as well. I did a session in it the other night, and I got mine to 263 miles now without any rods being broken as far as I know. It's not really a shoe that either of us are actually sort of keen to race in. I think just because it's just slightly heavier than, say, the Vaporflies. But having done the session I did on the other night on it, maybe I was thinking maybe I should give it a go. And certainly if the Pro 4 is rumored to be a bit lighter than the Pro 3, then I think it might take it down into the realm of the sort of the Vaporflies and the Endorphin Elites as well. Well, I forgot to mention actually that Yowana wore the Endorphin Elites in his Chicago Marathon. I wasn't quite sure what shoe he was going to use, but it's interesting. I think that would have been Andy's favourite shoe, but I think he feels that his Endorphin Elite is now a bit past it. If you go back to racing, EddBud here did the Bournemouth half marathon. I also associate running at Bournemouth or running along the prom in a very sort of flat terrain, but for some reason they had this course where it was partly on the prom, and then at 8 miles I think they took them up this off the prom up some steep hill, and I think the pace went from like 6:45, 6:50s to about 7:50s, and I think it sort of polished Ed off, but he did a very commendable 1:33. And I think he said on his Strava that he felt like a bit like an old man. I said to him, well, if you feel like that when you're sort of early 40s, wait till you get to me at 57. Anyway, you think he wore the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3 in this one. So it seems to have done okay. I think that course perhaps clearly wasn't a PB course, but good to see Ed out racing. Another video that caught my eye here is Harry JogOn podcast, and he was interviewed Poppy Guest, who's one of the leading young athletes in the country, and I was amazed how her sort of online presence was. I was thinking, well, she ought to start a YouTube channel herself. 13 years old and very eloquent, and I think gave Harry a bit of a run for his money at the Bushy Park run. I think they went to the big celebratory one, and I think she ran 17 minutes something. So yeah, that's very impressive running for sure. Another one I quite like for a bit of humour is the Serious Runner. Not the Serious Runner as in the Serious Runners I featured in Chicago, although this guy is actually quite a good runner, but he went a spoof on going shopping for running shoes, and yeah, it's always a bit of a chuckle, this one. He's always got his Tracksmith top on, and yeah, talk about the investment in the Alpha Fly 3. So yeah, if you want a bit of a chuckle, this one's always good for a laugh for sure. Now, Ben Parks popped up in Melbourne Marathon in Australia at the weekend and I think he ran 2:51. I think he paced it a lot better than he did in Berlin. So I think he was happy with that on the roll to the Valencia Marathon, which is his favourite marathon. So I'm interested to see how he goes in that one. And looks like it's trending the right way. And interesting to see a marathon from the other side of the world. I think there's a rumour, isn't it, that the Sydney Marathon is becoming a world marathon major. Have I got that right? So yeah, maybe that's another one that will be thinking of going. Although I'm not sure that I really want to do a marathon. At the moment, I can barely run. So talk of marathon seems a long way away. Bit like John Broome, I think I may sort of like give them a bit of hiatus for a while and then come back to them maybe when I'm 60. But yeah, but I do like sort of feel when I watch all these marathons, I sort of get the bug for it, and I think in the YouTube world it does seem to be the most popular event, doesn't it? It seems to get the most attention, and maybe it's because it's like the distance of it is long enough that people can pull out their camera even though they're going at PB pace and make odd comments. And I think the training series is always good, and I think it's also aspirational because I think a lot of people aspire to run a marathon, and so they see, well, us, I've done a few marathons on YouTube, but yeah, people like Ben seem to do them prolifically, and he seems to just love doing them. So yeah, you can't argue with that, and it's good to see him all smiling in these things. On some more running news on elite news, I see Jake Wightman here, interviewed by Athletics Weekly. He's moving to Manchester, hoping to sort of resurrect his career. He's had a few lean years, obviously failed to make the Olympics with injury, failed to defend his world title when Josh Kerr won it through injury the year before. So I think it will be sort of a crunch year for Jake next year to see whether he can actually keep going, because I think as you go into your early 30s, unfortunately Father Time catches up with you, as I well know. So at that level, I think there's a reality sort of kicks in. But yeah, I hope he can sort of turn it around. And if you're into golf like I am, Bryson DeChambeau is definitely worth watching. And he did a scramble here with Phil Mickelson, who's another basically one of the world's best golfers ever all time. So yeah, this is a good watch if you're into golf. They tried to basically break 50 off the front tees playing scramble, and spoiler alert, they didn't make it. But yeah, it's interesting to see how they approach these things. A lot of par threes that are more or less drivable. Well, if you can hit the ball 300 yards. It's interesting, like he steps up to the tee and he says, oh, it's a bit far for a driver, 290. I need to sort of take a bit off it. And I think, well, my driver on a good day with a bit of falling wind in the summer might very roll out to about 240, 250. So how they do these things is quite impressive for sure. Maybe I'll stick to running. My handicap, though, is 11.9 stroke index. So effectively, I play off 13 in the medal. So effectively, that's 13. It's kind of like the handicap equivalent to the Run Britain handicap. So, yeah. And these golf courses seem so immaculate, don't they? In our country at the moment, it's like full of mud and you're going to get rained on and put all sorts of stuff. But yeah, it's a different world of golf in America for sure. And one other YouTuber that I noticed has come back, Patrick Martin, who's the prolific veteran marathon runner. He'd been injured for a bit and he's come back with a video talking about how many miles he's put on the Endorphin speed. So he seems to put like a huge amount of mileage on these things. Well over 1,000 miles there, 1,314 miles. And I was thinking, like, is he wearing these shoes so long that's partly the reason why he gets injured? Well, I don't think so. I think he just runs an awful lot of mileage. So I'm looking forward to see when he's going to race again, because he's been putting forward some amazing times. Doesn't race too often, but when he does, he really means business. So, yeah, I look forward to seeing how he goes. Okay, that's probably it for today. Hope you enjoyed this little YouTuber news interlude. See if I can make this into a little series if you think it's worthwhile. And I'm not in my basement here, as some people might imagine. And also, as a little sort of finale, I wanted to look up one YouTuber that on Strava that I featured, and it's just got a white screen. One of the guys I featured in Berlin. It wasn't the one you think of. I think he's actually blocked me from Strava. So, yeah. I'll let you guess who that might have been. But anyway, so I hope you found that interesting. Like and subscribe on that, and see you on the next one then. Bye. Oh, that next one might, all being well, be a look at the Abingdon Marathon prospects of Andy FOD Runner. And I'm also going to try and cover John Broome, who had entered it and decided not to. So see how he's pivoted from that marathon to 5K, 10K training, which I think he actually likes best. Anyway, look forward to that, hopefully near the weekend. I've got to do the research for it first, of course.
Oh, and Daisy's obviously along for the ride as usual. Daisy! Daisy!